Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Future Proofed. I'm your host, Brent Muller. Happy and excited to have Connor Snyder from Story on today. Connor, welcome.
Brent, super excited to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be really exciting because Connor's involved in so much in the AI space, starting with the marketing. But before we get into all that, Connor, just give our audience a little bit about you and Story and how you became the founder and kind of your journey.
Yeah. So it's funny. It really starts with me in high school. I was like a film kid. I loved making videos. I would always do film festivals, just obnoxious, crazy stuff, you know? And I would always go and post this and then share it with my friends on Facebook. And we'd have all these like little Facebook groups that we were in. And I remember one day my mom, she like walked into the family office and she was like, "Get off of social media. You're never going to get a job just spending all day on Facebook." And I think about that now where so much of my career has been touching Facebook. When I was in college, I went and worked for the MBA program at Utah State. I wasn't in the MBA program, but I worked for the MBA program, which was cool because I got all this exposure to different lectures and professors, but they were trying to get more applicants for the program and asked me to dabble in Facebook ads. And that was an awesome opportunity for me because I wanted to play with that paid social side. And that kind of introduced me to the world of paid marketing and paid social. And from there, I started looking at how do I help people use these tools effectively? And so much of what was coming to paid social was stuff that you see like on TV. You know, it's overly polished stuff. It's companies leading with the brand first, not the person first. And so I started
like too buttoned up, right?
Too buttoned up, too polished. Like it came across as overly commercial and inauthentic. And I ended up getting a job randomly at a mortgage marketing or a mortgage brokerage. So they had like 200 loan officers that all did mortgages. And they asked me to come on to do social media. And it was so funny because all of a sudden I discovered that there was all of these loan officers who have a book of business that's just personal relationships. And there was this thing that clicked for me of, I need to help these people make video and post it and educate all the people that they know about how mortgages work. And so we created this whole paid social strategy that just worked so well. And from that process, I ended up going to get a job at a real estate tech company called RedX and worked there. And on the side was starting to build my own little marketing agency. So one day I went to my boss and was like, "Hey, I gotta quit. Like this thing's starting to blow up. I'm getting some traction here in my agency." And my boss is surprised. He had no idea I was doing this. And he was, as I told him about it, he was like, "Well, this is so cool. What if I wrote a check and jumped in with you?" And so all of a sudden I had a new partner in the business with my other co-founder that I had met at the mortgage company. And then we started really building out some of the tech side into what we have today with Story.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Like
it was crazy, kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
When does your boss come to you and be like, "Hey, can I write you a check?" That never happens.
Never happens. Never happens. So tell me a little bit about Story, right? So you got up to that point, right? And then you're like, "Hey, now we have Story." So tell me a little bit about Story's journey.
Yeah. So with Story, when we were first doing the marketing agency, and as I was, consulting people over the course of that time, I had a mentor by the name of Dennis Yu, who does a lot of social media training and coaching.
Yeah, I've heard of Dennis.
Yeah. And so Dennis, I remember one time I was talking to him and he said this one sentence of excellence is repeatable and that he demanded excellence for the people that worked with him. And as I thought about that, this idea of excellence being repeatable, to me, that meant that excellence had to have a process. Excellence isn't accidental. You don't just stumble into it repeatedly, maybe once in a while. But if excellence is repeatable, then it has to have a process. And so I started looking through the lens of, if we're going to create social media marketing, which so often feels like it's built on trends and viral moments that aren't
Yeah, and
repeatable.
haphazardly, right?
Right.
It feels that way, right? Yeah.
It feels that way. How do you build a process around that so that people that are trying to stand out in the noise and cut through the noise, which is more important than ever with like all of the AI content that's just drowning everything. How
Right.
do you cut through that noise? And so that's the process that we really were curious about with Story. And in the beginning, it was all about, well, the way you got to cut through it is through personal brand and personal relationships. And you can build those online, and those online relationships can be just as important and valuable as anyone you meet in person, as long as you bring that authenticity there. And then how do you package that and communicate that and all of that?
Right.
And so our mission at Story is to help people share their authentic message online, and everything we do comes back to that.
That's fantastic. Really, really cool. And so I want to pivot a little bit, right? Because again, we're future proofed, right? We're looking ahead, and I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So first, let's talk about how you, because I know that you're going to talk about Story not being a content company, but being a tech company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of explain how you do that, and circling back, why future proof, right? We always talk about AI, data, and automation, and how it is disrupting things in a good way, right? I'm never a glass half empty guy. I think just like any other new thing that comes out, there's opportunity in how you adopt it and use it. So, and we're going to get into all that, I know, but yeah, talk about how you've turned Story into kind of more of a tech company.
Absolutely. So, and when we were like my side gig marketing agency with my other co-founder, I mean, we were just doing it with whatever tools we had. Like, we weren't building our own technology. We were going and grabbing this app and this app, and then bringing our services together to create a product. But when we had our new partner jump in, Mark, when he jumped in, that gave us funding where we felt like we could go and actually start building tech. And I'd been working as a product manager at his company, and so I was familiar with how to go and get apps built and all that. And
Right.
for me, the shift in my mind, and it's a transition that we still are working through, is how do you move from a services company or an agency to a tech company? And a lot of tech companies, they go the opposite flow. Like, they build an app and then they're like, how do we go add services on top of our app so that we get the adoption and usage that we want? But for us,
Right.
it's
Right.
like, we can help with all the usage and adoption. We just got to get, how do we use the app as a way to bring people into our ecosystem? And I think it's not just a important business strategy to do that. I think it's also future proofing our business,
Right.
because at the end of the day, AI content creation is here to stay. AI avatars are already happening. We've been building stuff with them. There's companies that are building their entire business on top of that idea.
Right.
There's every part of any creative process will be touched by AI to varying degrees. And so for us, the AI is a enablement, or the technology is an enablement tool for us to deliver our services. And that is why we think of ourselves as a tech company first, because that gives us the best experience possible to deliver our product to our users.
Yeah, and it circles back exactly what you said, right? What Dennis said is that, if excellence is repeatable,
Mm-hmm.
and to your point, right, that means it's systematizable, right,
Mm-hmm.
into process, right? Then tech and AI enable that, right, better than anything.
100%. And I think that's even just for anyone out there that's trying to incorporate AI into their business. AI, any process that we build manually at Story, we try to build it in a way where if we decided we wanted to automate it, we could easily go do that, right? And so my whole thing is like, go build it without code first before we go build it with code. And it's an
Right.
easy way where you can fail cheap and really figure out, well, how do you deliver the real results you want to bring to your customers? And if you can do it without code, adding the code becomes very simple because you already understand the process. If you start from zero just
Absolutely.
writing code, you're going to be wandering in the dark a little bit more, right? You're going to have to do a lot more customer interviews and product research. But if you just build the service without the code, that tells you everything you need to build, right? It gives you the map. And when you're trying to incorporate AI in your business, it's kind of the same thing. It can feel overwhelming at first. And sometimes you're going to get pitched on maybe this really big, crazy AI product. spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building out some custom thing. That's not what you have to do. Like go use ChatGPT and go export your Excel sheet to start and get familiar with how this data comes through, how you need to structure your data. And then all of a sudden you can start adding degrees of complexity to that,
Yeah, I totally agree. So I tell everybody, and it's a theme right on the podcast. It's a theme with my clients, is that you start small, right, and you pick one area, and what you learn so much about what you can do that then you build onto the next building block, and next thing you know, it's in every part of your company in the right way. To your point, right? So touch on a little bit, because I have a number of different areas I want to take you down, but touch a little bit on, because I know a lot of our founders and CEOs, their biggest concern is data, privacy, IP, protection, right? Commercial tools. What do I build? What are your recommendations? What have you done at Story? And then some of the things you're involved in.
Great question. It's this in a high innovation environment like AI is in right now. Security is one of the most important and complex questions because there's not a simple answer for it. On the one hand, there's so many new tools coming out constantly that you want to be able to test those things quickly, figure out if there's something useful there as part of that will fit in your business, and not feel like you've got to be tripping through compliance loopholes to make sure that it's going to be useful. So if you're thinking about a bigger company, that becomes a big problem. Even if you're in a smaller or mid-sized company, like something like Story is, I don't want to have all of my managers coming to me to get a thumbs up or thumbs down. And so having a policy that says we can use any AI tool as long as sensitive data isn't used for experimentation. That's a really important thing. The other thing that needs to be done,
really good point,
right? Because we can experiment with this stuff without using proprietary stuff, without stuff that's part of our IP. Like, let's go have some stuff that we can go put some rounds through to get familiar. And then we can say, does this actually work inside the business? Now, there is an important step here where you've got to go look at terms of service and make sure how is your data used. And the reality is, I even don't trust that often. Like there's too many companies popping up and so many people are just copy and pasting terms of service, like
from other companies, right?
From other companies, right? And so especially when you want to look and see who's behind the companies as much as you can. Do they have funding? Are they VC backed? Like look for those kind of indications of legitimacy.
Are they doing the right things? Right.
Exactly. Because some of these tech companies are awesome and they're legit and they've thought through that and they've got a legal team that's doing this stuff and they're being mindful about data training. And there's other companies that are like, let's grab as much as we can. Right. So one example of this is Cursor. If there's anyone that's managing devs, developers can use Cursor. It's where they're writing code and AI helps them write code. Well, the default settings on an individual account for Cursor is set to privacy mode off, meaning all the code that you're writing can be shared with Cursor for training. That's bad. That's your IP. That's sensitive info. And so you got to go make sure that's turned on, or you got to buy a corporate account that you can force that to be turned on. And that's just one example of all these apps having these explicit modes that you need to go and opt out of where your data is shared. So I think it's super important to be mindful of this stuff, but not be so cautious that you're not allowing your teams to innovate, because they will fall behind if you become too worried about experimentation.
And that's the balance, right? That right there, what you just said is the balance. And you have to lean into it more than you have to run from it, right? If you're a founder and CEO, because, one of my last podcasts, basically, they were in a mastermind group of other founders and CEOs, and the speaker that they had come in had said, companies of the future are either going to be AI first, or basically have an AI focus, and use it, right? Or they're going to get left behind. And it's as simple as that. And this is not to be a fear thing, right? And again, I want to get your take on this. It was more of the efficiency gained by freeing up employees to work on things that are not manual tasks and allow their brains to open up and solve more complex problems for the company will accelerate growth in a much higher way than they've ever seen before. And the companies that are afraid to adopt it, to your point, right, are going to get left behind because that gap's going to get bigger. And that's kind of what we're seeing across a lot of our interviews. So I just kind of want to get your take. I know it's a long-winded way of getting there, but what's your take?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm acting as the director of AI adoption for Green Sea Technologies. They're our sister company. They've got a portfolio of companies they work with. And part of that is because, we first built our integration with OpenAI before ChatGPT had even came out. So before it exploded, we'd already started dabbling this. And so we'd already kind of start building AI throughout all of our ops process very early on.
Wow.
And so part of what we've learned is a lot of things that work and don't work, ways to think about AI, mental models to apply to running teams. And so we're trying to take some of that and apply it across the org. And one of the things that I'm telling all of the teams that I am training is all of us are going to become managers of AI. All of us will become AI managers. And so what does that mean to be an AI manager? Well, I think in a lot of ways, being an AI manager is about effective communication. It's the same thing that you have to learn when you're communicating with human beings. It's the same thing a good manager does with AI or a human. And so what does that mean when you have a team of people where everyone's an AI manager? What are the soft skills that you've got to train on? Like project management stuff. How do you break down tasks into smaller pieces? How do you make sure you're giving the AI clear context to the thing that you're working on, clear roles and definitions and boundaries? And so I totally agree that companies that are not adopting this are going to be left behind. There are companies right now that the leadership team is not using ChatGPT even on a weekly basis. And it's probably actually the majority of companies. There is going to be a wide gap between those companies and the companies that are aggressively adopting this stuff. Because even in a simplistic way, if your team is using this, you are getting massive efficiency gains. Massive. Yep.
Hey, I interviewed Hadi Tabani from Liquid Tech, earlier last week, and one of the things he was telling me is that they built their own Fireflies kind of version for their internal.
Yeah.
And note taker, right? Simple thing. Think about like Zoom meetings, and I don't know if they're using Teams or Zooms. I can't remember, but basically they built their own that has a trigger word, and the trigger word, right, will create the action item and create a Jira ticket, right, and assign it out to their developers. And I said, that's brilliant, right? And he said that he thinks it saves 3 to 4 hours per employee per week. And I said, when we get to the point, right, and you being director of AI adoption, you're going to see this across all departments. When we start to be able to put measurements out there, right, CEOs and founders are going to go, and CFOs are going to come to their CEOs and go, why aren't we doing this? You know what I mean? So, so as the director of AI adoption, give us some insights that you are seeing in different departments, because most of the people I talk, they go, that sounds great for marketing and sales. Maybe support. I'm like, talk to me about the other areas that you're seeing it make an impact.
Yeah. So it's funny because so many people, see the marketers who are hyping stuff all the time. That's what the marketers do.
Right.
And so all the marketers are hyping AI. And so everyone looks at it as a marketing thing. But it's so true that AI goes through every aspect of the business. Any part of the business that requires intelligence, AI can be useful in. And so one of the I'll tell you one thing that I just did with it just over these last couple of weeks. I have a pretty standardized process-driven planning process that I've learned, had awesome coaches to just go through and do annually and quarterly planning. And this year, I'd always, for the past couple of years, used AI to give kind of like a second perspective on stuff. But this year I decided, before I bring anyone in from my team, I'm going to do my planning process with me and AI, just the two of us. And so I gave
it's like
AI,
your new advisor, right?
Exactly.
That bounce ideas off.
I told it was a member of my board, and I wanted it. This is another thing that just a prompting tip here that I've found useful is because these tools are set to be helpful, tell it to be antagonistic. You'll get a lot better responses out of it. So I told it.
That's actually a really good point. I've been doing that lately too. Yeah.
It's really useful. And so I
don't want it to yes me to death. I want it to tell me where I'm not, where I'm off. Right.
Yeah. It's the worst therapist.
I'm sorry.
It's going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Worst therapist ever. So you go and prompt it. And I went through my planning docs. I gave it to it. I then asked it to create an agenda for us. And then I asked it to follow the agenda, and I threw it in voice mode. And I literally stood in front of a whiteboard and I was writing my ideas down and talking to it back and forth. I asked it to ask follow-up questions. And I'll tell you, it was a mean board member. It had a bunch of detailed questions afterwards that I actually spent a day or two going and finding out some more info to make sure that I understood what was going on. And so I think that bringing it in as a partner in your work for any task is something that we have to learn to reach for as a tool. I think a lot of people understand it's possible.
Yes.
But maybe the last time they tried it was like 3.5, GPT Turbo. And so it just was less sophisticated.
Yeah.
But go do that with O1
right.
and
GPT-4 is a game changer that way.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? 4 is faster. O1's faster. DeepSeek is also crazy. I just played with that for the first time a couple days ago.
I haven't played with that yet.
Yeah, that will blow your mind. And so like the pace of innovation is so fast. What you have to understand is things that did not work 3 or 4 months ago likely have made drastic improvements now. And so you need to be reaching for it as a tool and constantly pushing the boundaries of it. And maybe it's not giving you 100% successful, useful, actionable information, but I promise you it's going to do more than you can. So whether you're doing it planning for like vision level executive planning, or let's say you're on the sales team, one of the things that you can do is go get your recordings and transcripts of your sales calls. Take those, upload them into a custom GPT. This is the simplest way to do this. And then go do role play. Role play with your custom GPT. Ask it to bring up customer objections, coach you through it after what you could have said. And you'll find that you get really great ways to train your sales team at scale, right? And so, so this is, even if you believe that people are so binary about it. Sometimes people are like, well, either I'm going to use it for little tasks or it's going to replace everybody's work. And it's like, no, could this make your sales team 10 times more efficient? Could they be only working? Could we? Yeah. I mean, there's just so much possibility here. It's like wild to think through, but it is not just a marketing output tool at all. It's not just a content generator. This is to help your team be more effective at accomplishing their jobs.
Yeah. And so, and I've had a number of conversations recently about how the best way to feed your company info, right? Like, so you're talking about like the sales calls, you upload them, right, and build a GPT. But if you're thinking about like you're a C-suite executive, right, and you want to use ChatGPT like you talked about as an antagonistic board member, right? Especially think about they go to quarterly board meeting and they're like, all right, I got 2 weeks to prepare for this. Right, upload last month's deck and maybe the whole last year of decks and output to that, and then start doing it. So I think that's the piece that they miss, right? Because like you said, it's not an all or nothing. It's use it for specific things and learn how powerful it is.
Totally. I think getting the data so you can give it good, accurate context is one of the biggest challenges to give. And one thing that I think AI is really good at filling in the gaps. The problem is where there's ambiguity and it just fills in the gaps. Oftentimes it's going to fill in with inaccurate gaps because it lacks a lot of context. So one of the things that I've focused on with my team is I've got an operations guy who's a rock star, and he centralizes KPIs across the entire org with the understanding that we are going to have this organized in a way that it's digestible for AI. And it's crazy how many companies you go into who maybe have KPIs, they've got them tracked, but they're tracked in disparate systems. It's just however that team's manager or director is running it. And so then you try to go centralize that information. It's actually a pain. And for AI to go and digest it, all of a sudden there's a ton of data cleanup that you have to do. And I think that's a project where it's like with some AI assistance, you can get that stuff organized and cleaned up and formatted in a way that's going to give you really actionable insights. And so I think the work of bringing that together, and whether you're doing that in a really tech savvy way of like, let's go throw it in a database, let's go have APIs that are hooked up to it, let's build our own chat interface on the top of it, or if it's, I'm going to go get it and put it in a Google sheet and I'm going to go and throw that Google Sheet as a CSV and then put it into ChatGPT or use Gemini to reference the Google Sheet, those things both will give you the output that you need, but they both require you to have your data organized in a way that you can give AI the context for it.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. A really good point, right? Because I have seen that done really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you're right. Most companies have their KPIs in a bunch of different systems, and they have different dashboards that look different for everything, and they're not digestible, but then it gets worse for AI to do that. So, man, this is really good stuff. So tell me a little bit more about, the tech side and the other things that you're getting into.
Yeah. So I think on the tech side of AI, some of the things that I am really excited about is AI agents. And agents is kind of a buzzword right now. And so one of the things I've actually been having a fun time doing is talking to some of the developers that I work with closely with AI stuff and asking them to define an agent. And everyone kind of goes through these long-winded answers.
Yeah.
And
because there's really not as clear definition, right?
There absolutely is not. And so, but I think part of that ambiguity is really important to understand because I'm a marketing guy. So like I'll go into a marketing CRM and there's automations, right? And all the automations you build, there's a trigger and there's an action. And a lot of times we treat AI as a action, right? The trigger, it could be as simple as a chat back and forth, but you basically do something happens and the AI does something in response. And an AI acting agentically really is an AI that's doing that in multi-steps and making decisions without your input through more of it, right? So if you have an AI that's, for example, doing multi-step QA, right? Maybe you're having an AI that's looking at the video, breaking that video down, transcribing the video, taking that video and matching it against brand notes that the clients provided you. That's one thing that we do in Story. Like that is actually a pretty simple workflow. It's a couple of API calls, but if I'm supposed to go and actually have an AI that is ingesting lead information and then based off of the context of that lead information, going and deciding to send an email or send a text message, deciding when to send that email and text message, all of a sudden we're allowing the AI to take a lot more of it's deciding how to accomplish the task. We're not just telling it what task to do. And I think that's kind of the subtle difference. So I think that is
the next evolution. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Totally. Yeah. And so we're going to see more and more apps that do that. And it's funny because if you go and use some of these tools that promote themselves as agentic, you very quickly see the limitations of this. So I've been using a lot of AI code builders because I'm not a developer, but I work with lots of developers. And so I feel like, okay, I want to go write some apps. I know the concepts, what's going around. And I've actually been able to build some working, awesome, cool prototypes. I've also found the limitations of AI as our developers experience them. And it's very easy for AI to lose the context of what's going on. I'll ask it to rewrite something. And then instead of rewriting it, it's just going to create a whole new file. And now I've got duplicates and conflicts and you just start going down these rabbit holes. Right. And so I think that part of adopting AI, especially as leaders and us going to our team, is us saying, look, I know that it's not perfect. I know you're probably going to get frustrated using this, but you have to, you got to have a whole lot of failed rocket launches before you land on the moon, right? Like there's going to be rough bumps, but we are all going to develop our skills in a way that prepares us for an AI economy by us adopting.
Especially when we know that every 3-4 months, those improvements that aren't there could be there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And I think there's a lot of team members that have a lot of resistance to this. That's what I've encountered and seen is, we get really excited about it in the C-suite because it's like efficiency gains. Like we're not gonna have to hire as much, profitability improvement. Like this is all stuff that the C-suite gets excited
Margins
about.
go up.
Margins go up. We're doing great, right?
Time to fulfill goes down, right? Like it's like a dream. CFO's like, yes,
this is amazing. But like if you go to your team, there's a lot of resistance. And I think that if the culture is wrong, you can have a scenario where somebody finds a cool way of doing something with AI and then they just keep it to themselves. They're just like, dang, I'm saving a bunch of time. I'm working 2 hours a day instead of 8.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep this my little secret, because what do I have to gain from sharing it? And so I think it's important that we create a culture in our companies where people understand that we help people see the long vision. We help them see the long game of how this stuff plays out in their careers. And we help them see the opportunity that we can bring by letting them use these AI tools in their job, because that's not just going to benefit the company, it's going to benefit them as individuals to level up with their
Absolutely.
skills.
They're on the forefront, right? Because like you said, everyone's going to manage AI in some way, shape, or form, right? Going forward. It's just how and are you leading edge? Are you bleeding edge? Or trailing edge? Sorry. So Connor, I could talk to you for hours on so many topics of this. I love this stuff. I geek out on it because again, you're glad, like CEOs and founders need to think glass half full, glass half empty, right? If you fear for it, you're going to get left behind. So how do you turn into it, right? In the smartest way. And I think you've already laid that out, right? Start small, start in an area, start to get your head around it. But also one of the things that I've learned is document, stuff you're doing in a daily workflow and go, wait a minute, why am I taking this time? And once you realize, you can start to have AI accelerate that. And that's how you kind of do it. As part of your AI adoption role, right? Again, I know you're wearing 2 hats, but that's a really fun hat to wear.
Totally.
Yeah. So as you look down, right? Look the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think anyone can look I know people are talking about, I got a 5-year plan, but things change faster than ever today. I don't think it's as realistic. I think you pivot more than ever, right? So again, just my take, but I want to get your take on, as you look 2-3 years down the road, whether it's for Story or for if you're advising people in the Green Seed portfolio, what do you see?
Great question. I think that for more and more problems, we look to specialized AI tools as solutions. We start hiring AI services like we would employees. And part of the services we choose is about how easy is it to give it context, and how much context do we have to give it. In the same way that like you would hire someone that's junior versus senior, I think all of us are going to have access to very generalist, powerful AI models. But when we look for things that need to work on proprietary data, that need to specialize in certain industries or services, I think we're going to have a menu of different AI options where we decide to bring that on almost as if, and we think about it more like we think about employees versus just a SaaS product. I think that's something that we're likely to see. I think the other thing that we're going to see, and this matters, this maybe is the marketer in me, but I think this matters a lot for when we're thinking about growing our businesses. I think attention is already one of the most difficult things to get, and it's only going to get harder. I think the tools that people have to filter out noise, AI is going to solve a lot of those problems, I think, but it's going to be AI versus AI wars. It's going to be the AI that people have in their phones that's playing defense, the spam filter AIs, the algorithm recommendation system AI. It's going to be that AI versus the AI that we bring that's trying to get as much attention as we can from our users. And so I think that there's going to be this...
We could call it the algorithm wars. Yeah,
exactly.
You're exactly right.
And so I think what will happen is you're going to have consumer taste also change drastically. I think that when, this is just like Econ 101, supply and demand stuff. The supply of AI generated content is going to go to infinite, and it's probably going to be helpful and useful content. The supply of human created authentic content is going to decrease. And I think that there's going to be a premium on that. And I think there's going to be ways that different platforms sift through this to elevate this. And that's going to be an interesting thing too, because I don't know of anyone that's solved that problem well yet. The social platforms are moving more that way with paid accounts. I think X has done that. Facebook's done that. And you're going to have more, you're going to have a wider range of platforms. Some they're going to do more identity verification, and then some they're going to do like pseudonymous AI and human. It doesn't matter. Everyone's just all in the same pot.
Yeah.
So like you said, I don't know that anyone can really predict the future. I think the only thing we can do is come back to like human behavior, and we can usually count on that. But what that does in the
Yes.
context of whatever the future is, God only knows.
Yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So again, using the antagonist. By the way, like Connor, we're definitely going to have you back because you just bring so many insights. I love it because again, a lot of our audience and our interviewees are struggling with these decisions, right? Like, so I'll ask you this before I do the final question. I want to ask you this last topic is, as a founder, right, or CEO, you're thinking top line revenue growth, right, versus what you're managing with controlling expenses and operational costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so AI helps both, right? So if you're thinking, putting your founder's hat on, right? What would you say to other founders out there in those two areas? I mean, you've touched on a lot of topics, but a lot of times, I'll get, well, Brent, boil it down to me for, how am I gonna do top line growth, right? I can see some of this, but where do I do that, and where do I want to infuse it in operational? So if you just real quick, you're off the top of your head.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if I'm a CEO and I'm trying to figure out where do I get the most leverage out of AI in my business,
that's a great way to say it. Yes.
Like what I probably do is I would look at where's my greatest costs first, like what's costing me the most money that I can go and get more curious about. Is there anything operationally that AI can help accelerate? I think that's one way I'd look at it. The other way I look at it is, as I look at my product and services, how can I bring an element of AI to this that can bring that allows me to easily bring more value to my customers? The level of intelligence that we can get for such a low cost is truly wild. And I think one of the things that is I would encourage CEOs and founders to look at is things like account management. I think that there are things that you can do at scale in terms of personalization and support that would have been impossible without AI. And that doesn't mean you don't need a support team, but I think it means that the automated parts of support, the chat-based stuff, all of that can have a level of helpfulness that creates pleasant experiences versus frustrating ones. I also think that if you're, I think about, coaches, consultants. For me, I've got an operations coach that works with us, and she talks about how she uses AI throughout her whole process. To me, you bringing that to the table, even if your business is not about AI, but you bringing AI as part of what you're offering, is valuable to companies because you're going to help them. You're going to get them excited because you're using AI, and they're going to appreciate the forward thinking and the efficiency that you're applying there too. And so I think even if you're like, our business isn't really a tech thing, like that's not our stuff, AI has a role there 100%. You just probably haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. And a ton of, effort goes and mental cycles goes into account management and everything around that. That's a really good one that I wasn't even really thinking, because there's just so many places I've seen it infused, but that's a really, really good one. And I think a lot of people watching this will have to think long and hard about that. So I always ask this last question before we have you talk about story. So again, our podcasts are really all about glass half full, but we always also want to end with a challenging question, right? Which is, if you thinking about story, right, as the founder, if you look at your biggest challenge for 2025, right? And if you could wave a magic wand, right, and have that at the end of the year, get fixed, what would that one big thing? And the reason why we ask, for anybody that hasn't seen our podcast before, is because we want to make sure that we realize that no one's got it all figured out, and everyone's got some place that they're, because you did your quarterly planning or your annual planning, right? There's something big in there.
Long list of weaknesses.
Every founder has it, right? Every founder has it, but this is the other part of the insight we like to bring. So anyway, get back to that. What's that one thing that if you go wave the magic wand that 2025 would get fixed?
That is such a good question. I think one of the things that I'm trying to solve is, how do I get more alignment with my team? I think one of the things that has happened as we've used AI more is you almost get faster cycles within each, like the smaller departments of people. And as story has grown, you start having, it's a lot easier to have these silos be iterating and learning, and then be very disparate from other teams. And I mean, we've got people that are all over the world. So like, we're like on different shifts and time zones. And so how do you get everyone aligned and have like a shared purpose and culture that brings people together? And I think that it's important. Yeah, I don't feel like I've solved that in a way that I feel really comfortable in, because one of the things I'm worried about just with AI generally is it can make more and more parts of our interactions with each other just feel more and more transactional. And I think that at work, if we want to have
that makes sense, by the way,
right? And I think at work, if we want to retain our people, and if we want to have talented people, they're going to come in here and help us remove the ambiguity that AI is never going to be able to solve, because it doesn't have, at the end of the day, that human context. It's like, we need those people to help us solve those problems. And so I want to make sure that as we grow and as we apply these technology, that we're also finding ways to bring our team together in a sense of shared purpose that they're finding fulfilling, and that they're not feeling like they're just prepping for AI to replace them as a cog in a machine.
Right, to replace
That's the
them,
thing I want to avoid.
That's awesome.
The culture.
That's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. And I think the next time we talk, I think we'll dive into culture with you, and how you've done that at Story, and managing international teams is, in multiple time zones. People struggle with that as well. And so we could definitely dive into that. But just to wrap up, I'd love for you to tell people about how they interact and engage with Story, right? And there'll be links, below, that we always do. But yeah, if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So you can check us out at story.com. It's 2 Y's, story with 2 Y's.com. We offer our app that gives you personalized content suggestions of content that you can create. We give you a teleprompter, so you can record that raw content really easily and upload it from there, but you can upload any content, whether it's from the app or not. And then our team of awesome creatives will go and edit your content, long form, short form graphics, deliver it back to you in the app. If you need someone to manage your social media, we can take all that content and then actually go and manage all the posting and stuff for you as well. And so we're really trying to be an agency that has all the convenience of an app. So if you're looking for help with creating a lot of content, building your personal brand, getting your message out there, and using AI to do it, we are here and happy to help.
Awesome. Connor, honestly, been a pleasure talking to you. I loved having you on. Like I said, I can geek out with this stuff with you for hours.
This is
we'll definitely have to do it again. But thank you so much. And I know everybody listens. Please get in touch with Connor and for any of your social media and content needs, because they're one of the best out there. So thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Brent. Appreciate it.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.